Hi everybody, and welcome back to Ewe University. I'm Dr. Kelly. Today is rainy and dreary, but we are having a 3-day weekend because it is fall break at the university where I work. We just get Friday off, not the whole week, but it's nice to have a small break for a 3-day weekend, especially since we haven't had any days off since Labor Day at the beginning of September. I am extremely behind in grading papers, so I'm hoping to be able to get caught up at least a little bit on that this weekend. Many of you might have spent the weekend at Rhinebeck, the New York Sheep and Wool Festival. Now, I'm not there, but I've seen a lot of awesome pictures people have posted on Instagram, and of course, it looks really like a really fun time. Some of my friends always ask me if I'm going, but honestly, it's really difficult for me logistically to get from rural Illinois to upstate New York for a weekend event right in the middle of the semester, even when we have a 3-day weekend. Plus, it's super expensive for me to fly there. I've looked into the airfare. And even though it would be fun to see everybody and hang out together, of course, that would be the best part of going. But I know I would not enjoy the crowds or standing in line for everything, or the traffic. You know me, I like to get off the beaten path. But speaking of getting off the beaten path, I'm actually organizing a knitter's summer camp for the first week of June next year. It's going to be in northern Minnesota, and we'll be staying in some rustic cabins. There is electricity and running water, but no internet unless you go into town, and the cell phone reception is spotty. But if you're really interested in getting away from it all for a week of knitting by a beautiful lake, this might be something to think about. There won't be any vendors selling yarn or project bags, no yarn crawls, and there won't be any classes to take. But there will be nature walks every day and plenty of time to decompress and just hang out with friends and knit or crochet or weave or spin, whatever you want to do. So this is really about anti-consumerism and taking the time to relax and escape the stress of everyday life. Get away from the phones, the computers, and just unwind. Now, we're only going to be taking reservations for 20 people. We are working on a website where you'll be able to find information, make your reservation, and pay. Our goal is to have that ready in the next month or so, and I'll give you more details when I can. But for now, it's just something to think about and maybe mark on your calendars. If you're interested in coming to a week-long Knitters Summer Camp from June 2nd through 9th, 2018, then stay tuned and I'll be talking more about it in future videos. Today in the library, I'm going to review an audiobook that I finished a while back, but it's one of those books that stays with you and you just keep thinking about. I actually reviewed this book on my audio podcast probably a couple of years ago when I was still doing that. And but because it had such a big impact on me, I thought I would talk about it again here. This book is called The Moor's Account by Layla Lalamy, and it is, of course, a book in my favorite genre, historical fiction. In this novel, Layla Lalamy tackles the European exploration of the Americas from an unusual perspective, that of a Moorish slave. The narrator in the book is Mustafa, a former North African merchant in his 30s who was forced into slavery by a poor economy. This book not only describes his childhood and the events that led to his slavery, but also his experiences in a Spanish expedition to Florida in 1527. Probably the most interesting thing about this book is that it's loosely based on the true story of a Spanish expedition led by the explorer Pánfilo de Narváez, of which only 4 men survived. One of the survivors wrote a report of the expedition, which mentions a Moorish slave, and Lalamy took that single line from the written account and created an entire backstory and character. The majority of the novel is about the 8 years Mustafa spent wandering in what is now the southern United States. It is a wonderful work of historical fiction that provides readers with a raw, unromanticized account of how the party of hundreds of explorers, soldiers, settlers, and slaves disembark from their ships and make their way from native village to native village in search of gold. Instead of finding gold, they stagger from one disaster to another, plagued with hunger, disease, poor navigation in unmapped territory, and resistance from the indigenous people. Along the way, they capture, torture, rape, and kill the natives, as well as steal food and supplies from them. On the other hand, Lalamy doesn't present the colonizers as purely evil and the native people as purely innocent. Throughout the novel, the Spaniards' authority diminishes as they go deeper into indigenous America and rely more and more on the natives for food and shelter. This is one of those books where you wish there was a map that went along with it so you could see exactly where Mustafa and his companions travel as they move from the islands of the Caribbean to the Tampa Bay area of Florida, and then across Louisiana, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, and then northern Mexico. As I listened to this story, aside from knowing that the group was moving steadily west, I had no idea where they were each time a new native tribe was introduced. I would really have liked to have been able to orient myself in the text. But after listening to this book, I found out that Lalamy has a website which shows where she envisioned Mustafa's travels to take him. Now, the Moores account was a finalist for the 2015 Pulitzer Prize and the Man Booker Award. And it did win the 2015 Arab American Book Award. It read as if the expedition could have actually happened that way. And the vibrant perspective of Mustafa underscores the notion that history often dismisses crucial voices, and in doing so, provides only a fraction of the truth. Now, the ending of this book is a little anticlimactic, but it does explore an intriguing question. After their 8-year odyssey, will Mustafa's owner, who became like a brother to him during their years living among the Indians, keep his word to free him once they rejoin Spanish society? Now, the author, Layla Lalamy, was born and raised in Morocco. She holds a PhD in linguistics from the University of Southern California and is currently a professor of creative writing at the University of California, Riverside. It is clear that she did a great deal of research prior to writing this book. It's very thought-provoking, and I know I won't forget this story. Like I said, I can't stop thinking about it ever since I finished it. I'm giving this book 5 stars, and the audiobook reader, Neil Shaw, was amazing. He was able to give all the Spanish characters, as well as Mustafa and the other Moorish characters, individual voices with impeccable accents. He gets 5 stars too. And again, that is The Moors Account by Layla Lalamy. Today in the classroom, we're going to be talking about biosynthetic fibers, which is one category of fiber that is made into yarn. Now, fibers are generally divided into 3 main categories. And the first is natural fibers, which come from animal or plant sources, and they're not chemically altered or transformed to produce a finished product. Some examples of natural fibers that you might have worked with are wool, cashmere, and silk, which all come from animals, and cotton and linen, which come from plants. A second category of fiber is synthetic fibers, which are created from chemicals in the laboratory and require extensive processing to become a finished product. Most synthetic fibers are made from plastics derived from petroleum byproducts. And some examples of synthetic fibers that you might have seen in your yarn are acrylic, polyester, and nylon. A third category of fiber are those that start out as naturally occurring cellulose or protein, for example, in plants like bamboo, soy, sugarcane, and corn. These natural materials are then chemically processed, which changes them into a different form and extracts fibers that can be spun into yarn. And these kinds of yarn are called biosynthetics because they start with naturally occurring raw materials, but they're manufactured in a laboratory with chemicals that change them from their original form into something that can be spun into yarn. Now, the oldest biosynthetic fiber is rayon. Rayon was first patented in 1855 by a Swiss chemist who developed it as an inexpensive alternative to silk. He discovered that cellulose from cotton or wood could be turned into fiber, thread, and fabric. The first factory for commercial production of rayon, or artificial silk, was built in France in the 1880s. The term rayon was coined in 1924 as a generic term for regenerated cellulose fiber, which up to this time had just been called artificial silk. Today, rayon includes several variations. You might have worked with yarns that have ingredients like viscose, modal, or tencel. These are all different forms of rayon, with tencel being the newest. It was introduced to the U.S. market in the 1990s. Now, the basic method of producing rayon is similar to the natural silk manufacturing process followed by the silkworms, who transform the cellulose of mulberry trees into fine silk filaments. Although there are different processes for manufacturing rayon that vary between the chemicals used, the basic procedure has traditionally begun with wood chips or cotton linter. The wood chips are mostly obtained from fast-growing trees like pine, spruce, or hemlock, although tencel is made from eucalyptus trees and modal is made from beech trees. Cotton linter is the fine, silky fibers about 1/8 of an inch long that cling to cotton seeds after the ginning process. So all of these wood and cotton resources can be turned into rayon. The wood chips or cotton linter are chemically treated to make sheets of pure cellulose, which look like big sheets of paper. The cellulose sheets are soaked in sodium hydroxide, or lye, producing fluffy white flakes known as cellulose crumbs. These crumbs are aged in metal containers for 2 to 3 days under controlled temperature and humidity. Liquid carbon disulfide is added to the aged crumbs, which turns the crumbs a light orange color. These are then dissolved in a weak acidic solution, resulting in a thick, viscous emulsion that looks like honey. The term viscose comes from the thick viscosity of the material at this stage of processing. The viscose is aged, filtered, and vacuum treated to remove any air bubbles because air in the final product will cause the filaments to break. The viscose is then forced through a spinneret, which looks kind of similar to a shower head with water shooting out of the holes, the little holes. But in this case, the viscose is coming out of the little holes into a bath of sulfuric acid, which coagulates the cellulose to produce filaments. And that's why rayon is often called regenerated cellulose. Next, the filaments are carried through a series of cylinders as they're stretched, washed, bleached, rinsed, dried, twisted, and wound onto cones or spools. As far as rayon, viscose, modal, and tencel in yarns, it seems like most of the time you'll find these blended with cotton or wool, although you can find 100% rayon yarns. Now I looked through my stash and I found some yarns with all three types of rayon in them. This one is Plymouth yarn Baby Bunny. It is 60% Pima cotton and 30% modal and 10% Angora. It's very soft and squishy with a light sheen from the modal rayon. It's got a really nice feel to it. And this one is from the brand Grignasco Knits and is in the base called Loden. It is 50% wool and 25% alpaca and 25% viscose. Now this yarn is tweedy, so it has little nups in it. It's certainly squishy yarn, but it's honestly not the softest, and it doesn't really have any kind of a luster. It has a little bit of a halo from the alpaca though. And this one is from Munchkin Knitworks, and it's their Glitz base. It is 50% merino, superwash merino, and 50% tencel. Now you can see, hopefully, that this one has a real noticeable shine. It's soft and smooth and will probably have a beautiful drape when it's knit up. Now, we also hear about yarns made from bamboo, soy, sugarcane, and seaweed. And it's the same story with these. These fibers are created using basically the same viscose process. This process can actually produce fibers from any cellulose or protein source like milk, corn, chicken feathers, peanut shells, and even bacteria. Yes, yarn made from bacteria has actually been produced in the lab, but it's not being commercially produced for widespread sale that I know of. Still, it is kind of interesting. So let's talk about some of these offbeat sources of fiber, at least the ones that are gaining entry into the yarn and knitting world. First, let's talk about bamboo, because it has been popular for years as a yarn ingredient, and it produces a beautiful, soft, drapey, knitted fabric. Bamboo is botanically categorized as a grass, not a tree, and it's extremely fast growing. It can grow a yard or more in height in one day. After harvesting, bamboo doesn't require replanting because it has a vast network of roots that continually sprout new shoots. Most bamboo yarn is chemically manufactured by cooking the bamboo leaves and woody stems in strong chemical solvents, just like I talked about. It's the same process used in making regular rayon, except this is often called bamboo rayon. Now, bamboo rayon has a natural sheen and softness that feels and drapes like silk, but it's way less expensive and more durable. It knits up into a strong fabric that wears well. Bamboo clothing is easy to launder. You can just machine wash it, tumble dry. Bamboo is hypoallergenic, non-irritating, even to sensitive skin. It's also antibacterial and antifungal, which means anything made out of bamboo yarn should remain fresh smelling. Bamboo yarn is great for summer tops, dresses, and skirts. It's cool and highly absorbent, wicking water away from the body 4 times faster than cotton. In warm, humid weather, bamboo clothing will keep you dry and comfortable, and it also provides some UV protection. Now, the downside of bamboo is that it does lose strength in water, so it wouldn't be good for something like swimsuits, and it has a tendency to snag. Now, I have several yarns that are either 100% bamboo or bamboo blends, and I'll just talk about a couple of them here. First of all, I purchased a yarn sampler box from Bellatrista Yarns, which includes 4 biosynthetic yarns: soy, milk, corn, and bamboo. And the bamboo yarn is a very nice sport weight yarn. It's natural white, and it feels a lot like cotton. Now, Ravelry has some really gorgeous projects that people have made with 100% bamboo yarn. Not necessarily this particular brand, but look at this baby jacket, this beautiful sweater, and this exquisite lace dress that someone made. Wow. One of my favorite projects in bamboo yarn is this magnificent shawl. And the pattern for this is Summer Flies, which is one of my all-time favorite shawl patterns. So now I'm thinking that I might get some more of this yarn and make one of those shawls with it. A lot of times you'll also see that bamboo is blended with cotton or wool, like this yarn that I have, which is called Happy by the brand Wendy. And sorry, this yarn has been discontinued, but there are dozens of other bamboo blend yarns that you can still get. Anyway, this yarn is fingering weight, 75% bamboo and 25% nylon. If you look on Ravelry, a lot of people have made socks with this, but some people have also made beautiful shawls out of it too. I'll probably just go ahead and make socks out of this one. Another relatively common biosynthetic yarn is banana silk. Banana silk is made from the outer layers of bark on banana palm trees. And just like everything else I've talked about, this bark is soaked, broken down into pulp, and the cellulose is extracted to produce the fibers. Banana silk has properties similar to regular rayon. It's silky, lustrous, and soft. It's great for things like scarves, shawls, hats, and more. Now, I don't have any banana yarn, but I used to have some, and I found it to be really heavy, like it was very weighty in your hand. It wasn't one of my favorite yarns, and I could never figure out what to knit with it, so I destashed it to someone who loves it. But for some ideas today, I looked on Ravelry to see what others had made with it. And some people actually said they really didn't like this yarn, so I guess I'm not the only one. And that's something to think about. But a lot of people had made things like cowls and scarves, and that is banana silk yarn. Sugarcane is another offbeat source of cellulose that can be made into yarn. Like bamboo, sugarcane is classified as a grass, and it's grown for the purpose of extracting sugar from its stalk. But after the sugar juice is removed from the sugarcane stalks, there is a dry, fibrous plant material left over, which is called the bagasse. Until recently, bagasse was treated as a waste product and was often burned in large bonfires. Sometimes it's used in the production of ethanol and for making paper. The bagasse is a source of cellulose, so using the same process as rayon that I previously discussed, it's shredded and broken down into its cellulose components in liquid form, and then it's pushed through a spinneret to make those long strands of fiber. And these filaments are solidified in acid and then washed, dried, spun into yarn, and dyed. The end product is often referred to as sugarcane rayon. Yarn made from it is silky and lustrous, similar to bamboo yarn. Now, I have this sugarcane yarn from Queensland collection called Sugar Rush. It is a beautiful sport weight yarn. For ideas of what to make with it, I looked on Ravelry and I saw some gorgeous lacy shawls, several baby cardigans, and even some socks. Now, I have 5 skeins of this, so I might actually make a shawl with it. It seems like it would be nice for baby items because it's so soft and lustrous, but it has to be hand washed and laid flat to dry. I don't know how well that would go over with a new mom. So yeah, I'm thinking a shawl would be good. It will be soft with that beautiful shine, and it will drape really well. You might have also seen yarn made out of seaweed, which is called sea silk. These fibers are made from a type of seaweed called brown algae, also known as knotweed or knotted kelp. It's a special type of seaweed found in the unique ecosystem of the Icelandic fjords. The seaweed is harvested every 4 years in such a way that the plants can continue growing. Now, seaweed contains cellulose, which is extracted and processed into filament form, in the same process as rayon is made that I previously described. Sea silk fiber is antimicrobial and resists odor, so yarn blended with sea silk would be good for making something like socks that keep your feet smelling fresh. It has terrific luster and drape, making it another great choice for summer tops. And it wicks away sweat from your body, which would be useful for sportswear. Now, I don't have any sea silk yarn right now. I used to have some, but I made a lacy scarf out of it and gave it to someone as a gift. Of course, I don't have a picture of the finished scarf, but I'll show you a picture of the scarf in progress. It did turn out very nice, and the recipient loved it. And in looking on Ravelry, I found a lot of gorgeous lacy shawls that really show off the sheen and drape of this yarn. And again, that is sea silk, which is made from seaweed. All right, now let's talk about some biosynthetic fibers that are created slightly differently. These are sources that don't contain cellulose, but that are made into yarn based on other ingredients. And one of these is yarn made out of corn. The process for manufacturing corn yarn centers on fermenting and distilling a simple plant sugar called maize dextrose. This sugar is fermented in a process similar to making yogurt. The corn is taken off the cob, dried, cooked, fermented, and then made into small pellets that are chemically treated. This process results in a polymer that is forced through a spinneret, creating a filament that can be spun into yarn. Now, corn fiber balances strength and resilience with comfort, softness, and drape. Yarn made from corn fiber is like cotton in appearance. It's breathable, has good wicking ability, good moisture management, and good flame resistance. It also has more resilience and crimp than cotton, making the resulting fabric more springy and the yarn itself easier on the hands to knit with. It has a subtle luster and a nice drape. Corn fabric has low odor retention and stain resistance. And finally, it's biodegradable. Now, I've actually tried out quite a few different corn yarns, and this latest one is the corn yarn I got from Bellatrista. It is DK weight, and I think this is a really nice yarn. The other corn yarns that I've had felt, I don't know, there was just a little synthetic feel to it. It was kind of a weird texture, but this one I really like. It's soft and smooth, kind of feels like cotton. You can see on Ravelry a bunch of ideas for projects that people have made with corn yarn, not just this brand, but other corn yarns as well. And there are a lot of baby projects, like this pretty baby dress and this colorful baby blanket. There were also a few shawls, and they turned out really beautiful. Now for myself, I could see this yarn becoming a gorgeous shawl, although I'd obviously need to get more of it. But yeah, I really like this one. So this is yarn made out of corn. Next up are a couple of natural materials that can be made into yarn by extracting their protein rather than cellulose or sugar. And one of these materials is milk. Yes, milk can be made into yarn, and you might be surprised to know that it has been for many years. Fiber made from milk was used in many clothing and household items in America and Europe during the 1930s and 40s. It was a substitute for wool, which was needed by men on the front lines during World War II. However, it fell out of use when the war ended and when less expensive synthetics like nylon grew in popularity. So how is milk yarn made? I mean, milk is clearly not a fiber, nor does it give off the impression that it is fibrous in any way. So you might wonder where they found fiber in milk. And you're right, there is no fiber in milk. But there is protein in milk, and that protein is called casein, and that is what is extracted and turned into yarn. The process is similar to the production of rayon. So first, milk is dehydrated and the fat removed, and through chemical baths, the milk protein, casein, is extracted. The casein is dissolved in an alkali solution to make a syrup, which is around 25% protein. This casein syrup is pumped through a spinneret to create protein filaments, which are then immersed in another chemical bath to solidify the protein fiber. The fibers are then stretched, dyed, and spun into yarn. Now, milk yarn readily takes dye. It knits up into fabric that is comfortable and springy. It has good moisture absorption and wicking ability. It's glossy and it feels like silk. And it's antibacterial and antifungal. Milk yarn would be perfect for knitting things like t-shirts, sweaters, and sportswear. Now, each year, millions of tons of milk deemed unsafe for human consumption are discarded. So it's great that we can use some of that product to create beautiful knitwear. On the other hand, it takes about 100 pounds of skim milk to make 3 pounds of milk fiber. So even though milk yarn is enjoying rising popularity, until production costs change, it's probably going to remain a luxury fiber. Now, I do have a sample of milk yarn here in my Bella Trista box, and I love this yarn. It is super soft and smooth, and it would be lovely to wear against the skin. And actually, this yarn is one of the approved yarns that you can use to make the breast prosthetics called Knitted Knockers. Knitted Knockers is a wonderful charity organization, and I know some of you already knit or crochet for them. On the Knitted Knockers website, they have patterns for both knitting and crocheting the breast prosthetics. These are super fast and easy projects, and I'm going to use this milk yarn to make some. In fact, if you're interested in knitting or crocheting for this charity, the Bella Trista website offers a special price for their milk yarn. You can get a skein of it for only $8.50 when it usually costs $20 a skein. Now, it's undyed yarn, not dyed, but hey, you're doing it for charity. And one skein makes 4 prosthetic breasts. Of course, I will put links below to all that information in case you're interested and want to go check it out. So that is yarn made out of milk. Another fiber similar to milk is soy. You've probably all seen soy on yarn labels. It has become very popular, especially with environmentally conscious people who are looking for products that are eco-friendly. Now, soybean fiber is created from protein like fiber made from milk is. The processes are a little different though. First, the soybeans are hydraulically pressed to remove the oil. This leaves a soybean cake that is used to distill the protein. The cake is chemically treated to extract the protein, which is mixed with polymers and then heated. The resulting thick solution is pushed through a spinneret, and the filaments drop into a chemical bath which coagulates them, and then they're spun and wound onto spools. Soy yarn is lustrous and drapey like silk. It is lightweight, soft, and smooth, and it has been described as feeling like cashmere. It absorbs moisture as well as cotton, and it's very good at wicking sweat away from the body, meaning that clothing made from soy yarn is comfortable and sanitary. The natural color of soy yarn is light yellow, but it can be dyed. It is stronger than wool, cotton, and silk. It doesn't shrink in the wash, it doesn't wrinkle, and it dries quickly. Now, soy yarn is fairly easy to find. Most major manufacturers offer soy and soy blends, and you can find them online if your local yarn shop doesn't carry them. Now, I've got a sample of 100% soy yarn here, and this was in my Bella Trista box, and this one is another lovely DK weight yarn. It's very soft and pleasant to the touch. And I'll shoot a close-up of it. If you look closely, you'll see a little halo similar to what cashmere looks like. So here you can see the soy yarn, which is a very light yellow, next to a yarn that is 30% cashmere, which is the kind of reddish colored one. And hopefully you can see the similarities. And what are people making with soy yarn? Well, on Ravelry, you can find so many attractive projects, lots of shawls and scarves. It would also make a nice tank top. So I just don't know. I just have this small sample, so I'll probably need to get some more when I figure out what I want to do with it. So that is yarn made from soybeans. Now, the last biosynthetic yarn I want to talk about today is even more unusual than the others I've already talked about, because this one is kind of a combination fiber. Chemically, it has characteristics of cellulose fibers as well as characteristics of protein fibers. And this fiber source is called chitin. Chitin. Chitin is the main component of the shells of crustaceans such as crabs, lobsters, and shrimp. And for many years, these shells were discarded during the process of producing seafood, resulting in the pollution of coastal waters. So to avoid this, the U.S. federal government offered research funding to develop ways to use the chitin from these shells. And through this research program, it was discovered that chitin is especially well suited for medical products for a number of reasons. Among other awesome properties, it's strong, it accelerates healing of wounds, has antibacterial properties, inhibits tumors, and it reduces blood cholesterol. Plus, it's biodegradable, so as a wound dressing, it gradually decomposes as the wound heals. Now, today, chitin is used in things like surgical thread, artificial skin, artificial blood vessels, bone implants, and contact lenses. Chitin is also widely used for industrial purposes, such as water purification systems, because it binds with oils, detergents, and other contaminants suspended in water, and it helps remove toxic components from water. As far as a yarn ingredient, chitin is derived from the pulp of the crustacean shells. The shells are ground up into a white powder, which is processed very similarly to the production of rayon. The powder is dissolved in a chemical bath, filtered, and air bubbles are removed. The resulting solution is forced through a spinneret and immersed into a chemical bath so the filaments solidify. Then these filaments are washed, dried, and spun. Now, the only yarn that I know of which contains chitin is this yarn called Tofutsis, which I have here, and it only has 2.5% chitin in it. It's actually a blend of 50% superwash wool, 25% soy, 22.5% cotton, and 2.5% chitin. And I paid $17 for one skein at my local yarn shop, so it's maybe a little more expensive than other commercially produced sock yarn, not counting indie dyers. But if you look on Ravelry, you will find nearly 10,000 projects made with this yarn. Obviously, most are going to be socks, but there are also some other projects interspersed there as well. I am planning on making socks with mine. One thing I wanted to mention is that if you have seafood allergies, you might want to be careful with chitin yarn because it may cause an allergic reaction. I would hate to have somebody risk a serious allergic reaction just to try out an interesting yarn. So that is yarn made from chitin, which is made out of crustacean shells. So that wraps up my review of biosynthetic fibers. Today we touched on the manufacturing process of rayon from wood, bamboo, sugarcane, seaweed, and banana, all of which are based on regenerated cellulose. We also talked about corn yarn that is made from its sugar, and we covered the yarns that are made from proteins extracted from milk and soybeans. And finally, we discussed yarn made from chitin, which has properties of both cellulose and protein. Well, that brings us to the end of today's show. I hope you found it useful and interesting to get a summary and overview of some yarns that are manufactured out of natural resources. So have you heard of these yarns before? Have you used any of them? And if so, what did you make? I'm curious, partly because I need some inspiration for what I'm going to make with some of these yarns. And did I leave anything out? Are there other biosynthetic fibers that you want to see featured in a future video? I hope you'll join in the conversation by sharing your thoughts and reactions in the comment section below. I really do enjoy hearing from you. And as always, please leave a comment if you have any questions about today's show, if you have a topic idea for a future video, or if you'd like to see a product tested. Leave your suggestions in the comment section below because I would love to hear your thoughts. And thanks to those of you who have made suggestions for future video topics. I'm always adding to my list. And I also want to say that I will put links to everything I've talked about today in the description box below. So you can go check those out if you're interested. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I'll see you in the next video. For next week's show, we are going on a field trip. My next episode will be all about alpaca, and we'll be visiting my friend Kathy's Surrey alpaca farm to learn about these animals and their fiber, as well as a little bit about raising them. So I'm sure you won't want to miss that, and I hope to see you back here again next week. Until then, stay smart and have a sparkly week.